Hi, my name is Ned, and this is Ned's Corner. In this episode of my Science and Technology series, I like to share with you my thoughts about the mechanics behind radioactivity. A few weeks ago, I was organizing the medications in my pharmacy according to their expiration dates. I found a gel cap box that appeared empty since it was not rattling. However, upon opening the package, I found that the gel caps were adhered to one another and to the box's bottom. And despite my attempts to shake them loose, only a single gel cap would drop at a time, and only a few gel caps would fall when I struck the box against the countertop. Although I was taken aback, and out from nowhere, a question popped in my head, and I couldn't help but wonder if this was how radioactivity operated. This question lingered in my mind for few years, as I have searched the subject of radioactivity all over the internet, and all I could find was descriptions of the phenomenon and its history and definitions, but I could not find anywhere an explanation for its mechanism. I have always been thinking, in a philosophical way, about our universe, of what was before and what would become after. And about 10 years ago, I built up a model that is satisfying to my way of thinking. This model is detailed in a video titled New Space Architecture in 9 Comparative Approaches. Within this model, I developed a theory about radioactivity to fit my configuration of space and the universe. According to my arrangement, there is an ultimate emptiness and endless space, and an infinite number of finite spaces exist within it. Numerous metaverses types exist in those finite spaces, and every type of those metaverses obeys to its own laws of physics. Among them is the femtoverse, which is a cavity that exists inside an atom's nucleus, and is home to particles that produce radioactivity rays. But in my configuration of space and the universe, I was wondering how the radioactivity is generated and obeys certain laws, especially the half-life law. I had to find an answer to interpret those laws so to complete my configuration as far as possible, but I had no clue. Then came the pillbox incident, which served me as a hint, and got me to think that the radioactivity is caused by a shock received by a sample of radioactive material. But since there are no shocks coming from the outside of a radioactive material sample, then the shock must be generated internally. This has led me to believe that each nucleus of an atom must have a beat, and the summation of the beats in the sample produces the shock that causes a radioactive emission. It is obvious that one beat is insufficient to produce a radioactive emission. Otherwise, every radioactive nucleus would be over and out from its first beat of life. Then, radioactivity would not exist. Therefore, a radioactive sample should be composed of a minimal number of radioactive atoms to emit one radioactivity particle. This minimal quantity allows the sample to have a certain number of beats that are in phase, and that can synchronize into a synchronous vibration and resonate at a nucleus, generating one radioactive particle. This minimal number would be the level 1 of radioactivity, which indicates that it is the minimal sample or population of atoms where the probability to build a resonance is equal to 1. Now let's take a look at a sample of 8 nuclei. It is known that in our universe, the nucleus is the most dense object. Therefore, it generates a steep well in the space-time grid. And I believe that those nuclei are linked together with a hypertense grid that ensures the transmission of the beats and controls their synchronization. And as the space-time grid is governed by the real and complex dimensions, I believe that the hypergrid is governed by the aleatory dimensions. Now, when the resonance wave hits a nucleus, the hypergrid snaps at that point and sends a hypershock through that nucleus, which knocks the radiation particle out of the R cavity where it was lodged, thus emitting a radioactive ray. Finally, I think that following the level 1 of radioactivity, there may be a lower and less energetic radioactivity that is caused by the level 1 aftershock. This phenomenon is dependent upon the identification of the radioactive atoms and on the crystal structure, as well as the quantity and distribution of contaminants within the crystal, and the tension and of the waves in the hypergrid rules the laws of radioactivity. I hope you found this video interesting, and please share, like and subscribe, and see you in the next videos.